The storm over Varine 4 burned orange in the upper atmosphere, plasma lightning dancing through clouds of ash. Below, cities lay in ruins, their towers broken and their oceans turned black with smoke. The Varini, a small and peaceful species, had never known war. Now they huddled underground as enemy fleets bombarded their world, shaking the crust above them. Their only hope was an ancient transmitter buried deep inside the capital's mountain core. Governor Sellar stood before the console, her trembling hands hovering over the activation rune. "Send it," she whispered, her voice cracking through the static. An engineer hesitated. "Ma'am, the signal range is unstable. It may bounce through uncharted sectors." "Do it anyway," she said. "Someone will hear us." A blinding pulse of energy leapt from the mountain, firing into the storm clouds and piercing the sky. The message streaked across the void. A simple cry for help, repeating again and again. "This is Varina 4 under attack. Any allied ships? Please respond." It traveled beyond their borders, across forgotten channels, through dust clouds and silent satellites, until it struck something old, something that had not awakened in centuries, a Terran relay station. Rusted and floating near a dead star, flickered to life. For generations, the galaxy believed humans had vanished. Their homeworld sealed, their colonies destroyed. Their fleets gone silent, but the relay hummed, old metal groaning as power surged through forgotten circuits. In the darkness, a red light blinked for the first time in 400 years. Far away, at the edge of known space, a ship stirred. The Terran dreadnought TSS Valkyrian hung motionless above a gas giant. Half hidden by its rings, her hull was scarred, her armor dark, like obsidian. Inside, the bridge was quiet except for the hum of reactors and the slow breathing of the crew. Admiral Cale Arden stood before a holographic map, studying the flicker of the new distress signal. "Origin point, Varine 4, his officer reported. Signal classified as civilian low-tech, requesting aid." Cale's jaw tightened. "No response from any Alliance members?" "None, sir. It seems no one wants to answer." He turned toward the massive viewport, watching lightning crawl across the gas giant's horizon. "Plot a course," he said softly. "Let's see who still cries for help in this quiet galaxy," as the engines roared. The old ship came alive. Massive coils glowed with pale blue light, shaking off the dust of centuries. Every vibration carried the weight of humanity's legend. Once feared, once pitied, never forgotten, other civilizations had called them Deathworlders, born on a planet so violent that every creature there fought to survive each day. They were strong, adaptive, and unstoppable when pushed too far. And when humans disappeared, the galaxy sighed in relief. No one expected to ever hear from them again. The Valkyrian broke through slip space hours later. Emerging above Varine 4, the planet looked like a dying ember, smoke rising, continents cracked, orbit littered with wreckage, sensors pinged with hundreds of life signs below, barely clinging to survival. Cale stared at the devastation and felt something old stir inside him. He remembered Earth's burning cities, humanity's own wars. "Prepare landing teams," he ordered. "Medical, rescue, and defense. Full deployment." "Sir?" The officer hesitated. "The locals might—" "Panic. They don't even know we exist anymore." Kyle gave a faint, bitter smile. "Then they'll remember quickly, down on the planet." Governor Sellar felt the ground tremble again, but this time it wasn't bombardment. It was something descending through the smoke. The clouds split open as beams of blue light tore through the storm. Massive shadows moved above, ships larger than anything in their records. Her people screamed, thinking the enemy had returned to finish them. Then a voice echoed through the static of their comms, calm and deep. "This is the Terran fleet. Stand by for evacuation and medical support." Sealer froze, her mind blank. "Terran?" she repeated. "That name?" "That's a myth." Dropships cut through the ash, landing with precision among the ruins. Armored figures stepped out, tall, human, faces hidden behind helmets of black steel. One soldier raised a flag bearing a faded emblem, a silver circle crossed by 3 stars. Children hid behind rubble, watching these silent giants move with purpose. A medic knelt beside a wounded alien and began treatment without hesitation. The survivor looked up, trembling. Why help us?" The soldier's visor shimmered, voice filtered but gentle. "Because someone asked, from orbit." Cale watched the surface feeds for the first time in decades. The Terran flag touched foreign soil. He turned to his officer, eyes cold but alive. "Record this moment," he said. "The galaxy may have forgotten who we are, but it will remember again." Outside, the Valkyrian's engines pulsed like the heartbeat of a sleeping giant, and far across the stars, faint whispers began to spread. The Deathworlders have returned. The storm over Vereen IV had faded, but the silence that followed was worse. Smoke still drifted from the cities, and the survivors stared at the sky, waiting. They had been saved, yet fear clung to their hearts. Because the ships above were not allies, not the ones they called for. They were Terran, the Deathworlders, the monsters from the oldest legends. No one had seen them in centuries, and yet they had come. Governor Seller stood on a ruined balcony overlooking the burned capital. Her robes were torn, her face streaked with ash. Beside her, a group of council members argued in low, desperate tones. "We cannot trust them," one said. "They are myths made of war and rage." Another shook his head. "They stopped the bombardment. They saved us." Selar turned her gaze upward, where the great Terran dreadnought hung like a black moon. "They answered our SOS," she said quietly. "But what do they want in return?" High above, on the bridge of the TSS Valkyrian, Admiral Kale watched the planet's rotation. Screens around him displayed data, radiation levels, casualties, life signs, but his eyes stayed fixed on one image. A cluster of survivors gathered in the ruins. "Do they fear us?" his officer asked, reading the same feed. Kale gave a faint smile. "Good. Fear keeps them cautious. It keeps them alive." He turned away and walked to the observation deck. Every metal step echoed through the silent hall like a heartbeat. "The last time this fleet was seen," he murmured. "We were called monsters too, across the galaxy." Whispers spread faster than light. Old relay stations blinked awake, passing messages through forgotten networks. "The Deathworlders have returned," the words echoed across every world. Merchants canceled routes, military fleets tightened patrols. Empires that once fought humanity now trembled at their name. Even the Galactic Council convened an emergency session. They were supposed to be extinct, an alien minister shouted. "If they survived, what else did they hide?" another replied. For the first time in 2 centuries, the word Terran caused real fear again. Back on Vereen IV, human dropships continued their work. They brought food, medicine, and engineers. Every move was efficient, calm, and wordless. The Vereeni watched them with mixed awe and dread. Children pointed at the soldiers' armor, whispering stories their grandparents once told. About a time when humans fought wars that broke planets, when they conquered stars and then vanished without a trace. Now those same stories were walking again. A small alien child approached one of the soldiers. Her eyes were wide, her tiny hands shaking as she held out a flower made of ash. The soldier paused, then removed his helmet. Revealing tired human eyes, he accepted the fragile gift and gave a small nod. The girl smiled, not understanding why tears filled his eyes. "Admiral," came a voice through the comm. "Locals are responding with curiosity and fear, not hostility," Kale replied. "Good, keep it that way. We're not here to conquer. We're here to remind." Later that night, Governor Seller received an invitation from the Terran commander. A landing pad had been cleared near the capital. Lit by blue beacon lights, her advisors protested, "It's a trap. They could take you hostage." But she shook her head. "If they wanted us dead, we would already be." When she arrived, the air shimmered with heat from the ship's engines. The human soldiers stood motionless like statues of steel and light. Kale descended the ramp slowly, his presence heavy but calm. "You are the one who sent the SOS, he said. His voice deep and quiet. Sealer nodded. "We didn't mean to reach you. We called for allies." Kale looked at the horizon, where black smoke still rose. "Then perhaps your allies abandoned you," he said, "and fate called someone else." They stood in silence for a moment, 2 survivors of different worlds. Then Kale turned, pointing to the burning skyline. "We fought this kind of war before long ago," he said. "We know how it ends." Seller frowned. "And how does it end?" "With someone deciding never to let it happen again," he answered. As the night deepened, Terran drones moved quietly across the sky. They rebuilt communication towers, cleared the rubble, and powered generators. Human engineers worked side by side with Vereeni survivors. Though no words were exchanged, something unspoken began to form, a fragile trust. And yet, above them, in the shadow of orbit, the Valkyrian detected movement. Unknown ships, silent and cloaked. Gathering beyond the system's edge, Kale watched the blips appear on the tactical screen. His jaw tightening. "So," he whispered. "Someone doesn't like us answering this call." He turned to his officer, his eyes like steel under the dim bridge lights. "Keep the rescue going," he ordered, "but prepare the fleet for contact." The officer nodded. "Should we alert the locals?" Kale shook his head. "Not yet. Let them rest while they can." He looked once more at the planet below, glowing faintly beneath the stars. "Fear can be a weapon," he murmured. "But hope? That's what rebuilds worlds." Outside, the Terran dreadnought drifted silently across the heavens, its massive hull reflecting flashes of lightning from the dying storm. And on every nearby relay, one message repeated endlessly through the void. "Distress signal received," it said in an ancient human tone. "Response accepted." Morning came weakly to Vereen 4, the sun hidden behind thick clouds of smoke. The cities were quiet now. Filled with the smell of burned metal and dust, survivors walked through the ruins, staring at the human machines repairing their world. Tower cranes built by Terran engineers rose like silver bones from the ash. Drones flew overhead, scanning every collapsed structure and marking safe zones. To the Verini, it looked less like a rescue and more like a silent invasion. They had asked for help, but what arrived felt like a force of nature. In the capital square, hundreds of aliens gathered as the sound of engines filled the air. Dozens of Terran dropships descended through the smoke, their wings glowing with heat. The ground trembled as they landed in perfect formation. From within the ships, lines of armored soldiers marched out in rhythm. Each step echoed like thunder, disciplined and precise. Their black armor reflected no light, only the faint glow of blue insignias on their shoulders. They moved like living machines, but their presence carried something more, an aura of grief and power. Governor Seller stood beside Admiral Kale. Watching the formation unfold, she whispered, "Your soldiers look like ghosts." Kyle's voice was quiet. "They are, Governor. Every one of them carries ghosts." He turned his gaze toward the distant hills where the enemy bombardment had come from. His expression hardened. "We've scanned those coordinates. The attackers left. But they'll return." Seller frowned. "Why would they target us? We have no weapons," Kyle replied. "Because prey without teeth is easier to break." As the human troops spread through the city, they began their work. Medical tents rose first, followed by shelters and command hubs. Terran doctors treated alien children with calm efficiency. One medic used his glove's nanofabric to seal a wound. Smiling faintly at the stunned mother, "Don't move. This will heal faster than you expect," he said gently. Nearby, a massive soldier carried rubble off an alien family's home like it weighed nothing. Each act of kindness clashed against the stories the Verini had grown up hearing. They had been told humans were violent, selfish, and cruel, yet the beings before them worked without asking for reward or thanks. Still, fear lingered. Old instincts warned the Verini that power like this was never free. A group of alien officials approached Kale cautiously. Their leader, a tall, scaled figure with green eyes, spoke slowly. "Admiral, your people's technology, it is far beyond anything we have seen." Kyle nodded once. "We adapt. But why help us?" the alien asked. "We have nothing to offer." Kale looked toward the horizon where the sun struggled to break through the smoke. "When we were at our lowest, no one came for us either," he said softly. "So now when someone calls, we answer." Inside the Terran command ship, data flickered across the screens. Sensor Officer Mira reported, "Admiral, we've detected residual warp trails near the asteroid belt." Kale's voice grew sharp. "Enemy vessels." "Confirmed, sir, but they're cloaked." "Observing us from a distance." Kale clasped his hands behind his back, his tone calm but deadly. "They're testing our response time," he said. "Let them watch. It won't end well for them." The officer hesitated. "Should we engage?" Kale shook his head slowly. "No, not yet. The galaxy needs to see what we are before they see what we can do." Back on the surface, a strange quiet settled over the camp. The Verini children gathered around human soldiers, offering small gifts. Painted stones. "Handmade trinkets?" one child asked shyly. "Are you really from Deathworld?" A soldier chuckled under his helmet. "That's what they call our home." "Yes." "Is it true everything there tries to kill you?" the child continued. Eyes wide, the soldier paused, then nodded. "Yes. And that's why we learn to protect, not destroy. The words spread through the crowd like fire, softening the fear that had lived for generations. As night fell, fires burned across the horizon. Scout drones sent back live feeds showing enemy movement, ships gathering just beyond orbit. Kale watched silently, arms crossed. "The trap is tightening," said Mira. "They'll strike within hours." Sellers stood beside him on the bridge, her voice trembling. "Can your fleet stop them?" Kale's eyes never left the holographic display. "Stop them, yes, but that's not the point." "Then what is?" she asked. He turned to her, his voice like steel. "To remind this galaxy why humanity should never have been forgotten." The battle alarms began to sound. Crew members rushed to stations, the calm replaced by focused energy. "Raise the fleet," Kale ordered. "Activate defense grids. And prepare planetary shields." The command echoed through every Terran ship. Engines flared, weapons charged, and the void around Varine IV shimmered with power from the ground. The Varini looked up and saw the stars disappear behind vast silhouettes of warships. They had never seen anything like it, an armada awakening, engines roaring like beasts. To them, it was both terrifying and beautiful. On the bridge, Kale spoke softly to his crew. "They came here expecting easy prey. Let's teach them what Deathworlders do when someone cries for help." A hum of agreement filled the air. Every hand moved with precision. Every system came online. And as the first enemy ships uncloaked on the edge of the system, humanity's dreadnoughts turned toward them, their hulls glowing like the hearts of dying stars. The Deathworlders had arrived, and the galaxy was about to remember why their silence had been feared. The stars above Varine IV burned red as the Terran fleet spread across orbit. Massive dreadnoughts formed a protective wall between the planet and the darkness beyond. Their hulls glowed with faint blue light, lines of ancient metal forged for wars long forgotten. Every sensor and weapon locked onto the same place, the edge of the system. There, hidden in the shadow of the asteroid belt, the enemy fleet waited. Kale stood on the bridge, his face lit by the cold light of tactical screens. "They took the bait," he said quietly. "Just as we expected." Commander Mira looked up from her console, frowning. "Sir, this doesn't make sense." The signal wasn't random. It was routed through a decoy relay. Kale turned his eyes toward her. "Explain." "The distress call," she continued. "It didn't come directly from the surface. It was redirected." "By who?" Kale asked, his voice calm but sharp. "Unknown." "But the signal's trace matches Dominion encryption." At that name, silence fell across the bridge. The Dominion, a ruthless empire of slavers and raiders, had destroyed hundreds of colonies, and now, it seemed they had used Varine IV as bait. "They wanted someone to respond," Mira whispered. "And now they've found us." Kale looked out the viewport where faint glimmers of enemy ships began to emerge. Dark triangular vessels slipped from the void, cloaking fields fading like mist. He spoke slowly. "So they called for prey and got predators instead." A quiet murmur ran through the bridge crew. "Open a channel," Kale ordered. "Let's see what our hosts have to say." The holographic projector flickered, revealing the face of a Dominion warlord. His skin was metallic silver, his eyes narrow and cruel. "So," the alien sneered, "the myths are true. The Deathworlders still exist." Kale's tone remained calm. "You've been busy setting traps for the weak." The warlord smirked. "We expected merchants, maybe a patrol fleet. Not ghosts from an old war." Kale stepped forward, his presence cold and heavy. "You wanted a response. Consider your call answered." Before the Dominion could reply, Kale gave a single gesture. "Cut the feed," he said, "and target their lead ship." The sky above Varine IV exploded with light. Terran rail cannons fired in perfect sequence. No energy beams, no theatrics, just solid tungsten slugs traveling at near light speed. The first volley tore through the Dominion flagship, splitting it in half. Fire and debris filled the void as the rest of the enemy fleet scrambled to react. Varine's survivors looked up in awe as the night turned into a storm of light. The Deathworlders didn't fight like anyone else. There was no hesitation, no mercy, just precision and purpose. "Multiple hostiles down," Mira reported, her voice steady. "Recalibrate cannons." "Switch to kinetic spread pattern," Kale commanded. The Terran dreadnoughts shifted formation, massive engines glowing like suns, each movement choreographed. "Each strike exact," The Dominion returned fire. Plasma bolts cutting through the void, but the Valkyrians' shields shimmered and absorbed the impact with ease. Kale's voice remained calm. Return the favor. Dozens of Terran ships unleashed another barrage. The enemy fleet crumbled like paper under a storm. On the planet's surface, Governor Seller and her people watched from their shelters. The ground shook as streaks of light crossed the sky. A Varini elder whispered, "The Deathworlders fight like gods." Sailor closed her eyes, unsure if she should be grateful or terrified. Then her communicator crackled. "Governor," came Kale's voice, "you're safe now." "The threat is neutralized." "But Admiral," she asked, "why would anyone do this to us? We're not important." Kale hesitated before answering. "Because you were easy to reach, and because they didn't expect us." Hours later, the wreckage of the Dominion fleet drifted across the system. Terran recovery teams began scanning the debris. Pulling fragments for analysis, Commander Mira approached Kale with a datapad. "Sir, I found something," she said. "The original distress code wasn't sent by Varine 4. It was forged here." She displayed an image, an ancient Terran beacon hidden within the Dominion data. Kale's eyes narrowed. "That's one of ours," he said. "From before the Exodus." Mira nodded. "They must have found it, reprogrammed it, and used it as a lure." Kale clenched his fist. "They thought they could use our legacy as bait." He looked out the window at the burning debris fields. "Send a message to the Dominion's border worlds," he said. "What should it say, sir?" Mira asked. Kale's voice dropped to a quiet growl. "Tell them this galaxy may have forgotten who we were, but we didn't forget what we are." Back on the surface, Terran soldiers began returning from rescue missions. Children waved as dropships passed overhead. The once broken city now glowed with faint lights powered by Terran generators. Governor Seller looked up at the fleet in orbit and whispered, "They came because we called." Her advisor nodded slowly. "Yes. But now everyone knows they're back, in distant sectors." Across the far edges of space, the message traveled. Worlds that had once feared the Deathworlders now trembled again. Old enemies began to gather intelligence. Old allies whispered about forgotten treaties. And among the stars, the Dominion scattered, their leaders arguing. "They were not supposed to exist," one hissed. How did they survive? No one had an answer. Only the memory of a name that had once ruled the void. Humanity. On the bridge of the Valkyrian, Kale stood alone. He watched the stars beyond the viewport, the reflection of fire burning in his eyes. "The trap is over," Mira said quietly behind him. "What now?" Kale smiled faintly. "Now, Commander, we make them remember why the Deathworlders were feared." Outside, the fleet began to move again, silent and unstoppable, their engines lighting the darkness like dawn returning to a forgotten world. And somewhere deep in the ancient Terran systems, another beacon flickered awake. The galaxy was no longer safe from its ghosts. The fires above Varine 4 slowly faded into the dark of space. Where once the Dominion fleet had stood, there was now only drifting wreckage and silence. The Terran dreadnoughts moved among the ruins like guardians of an ancient graveyard, each ship marked with scars of battle, each one a monument to survival. The war was over, but the galaxy had felt the tremor. The Deathworlders were no longer a myth. They were real, and they had come back. Admiral Kale Arden stood before the massive viewport of the TSS Valkyrian. Below him, the planet glowed faintly, lights flickering across the surface as power returned. He could see the rebuilt towers rising where ruins had once burned. "Report," he said quietly, his voice calm but heavy. "Rescue operations complete," Mira replied. 32,000 survivors evacuated. "Medical camps established." Kale nodded slowly. "Good. Make sure they know we don't leave debts unpaid." Governor Seller appeared on the comm feed. Her face tired but proud. "Admiral," she said, "your people have done more than we asked for. More than we ever dreamed." Kale gave a faint smile. "You called for help, Governor. And humanity always answers." Her voice trembled. "The galaxy will not forget this, but they will fear you." Kale looked past her image toward the stars. "They already do," he said softly. "And maybe they should." Far across space, old networks began to awaken. Terran beacons long thought dead blinked one by one across forgotten systems. Signals spread like wildfire through the void, carrying a single coded message. "This is Admiral Kale Arden of the Terran Deathworld Fleet," it said. "Humanity has returned. Every major power in the galaxy received it. and none knew how to respond. Some sent envoys, others prepared armies. But all shared the same thought, fear mixed with awe. In the Verini capital, people gathered to watch the Terran fleet above. Children pointed to the glowing ships, their eyes wide with wonder. The stories of monsters had become stories of saviors. A child asked his mother, "Will they come back if others are in danger?" The mother smiled softly. "Yes, little one, that's what they do." On the bridge of the Valkyrian, Kale walked among his officers, each face reflected pride and exhaustion, each one carrying the quiet weight of victory. Mira approached with a datapad. "Sir, multiple relays are answering our signal." "Old Terran colonies, some still alive." Kale stopped, eyes widening slightly. "Alive?" "Yes." "Sir, small outposts, hidden, isolated, but they received our transmission." Kyle exhaled slowly. Then the exile was never complete. He turned to the crew, his voice firm. "Plot new coordinates. Destination." "Admiral," Mira asked. "Earth," he said, the single word cutting through the silence like a blade. For a moment, the bridge went still. No one had spoken that name aloud in generations. Even the ship seemed to hum louder, as if the word had awakened something ancient. "Sir?" Mira whispered. "Is it still there?" Kyle looked out at the stars. "Only one way to find out," as the fleet prepared for jump. Governor Seller's image reappeared. "Admiral," she said. "What will become of us now?" Kale's tone softened. "You will rebuild, and when others come, tell them who saved you." She nodded slowly. "And what should I call your people, Admiral?" Kale turned, his reflection in the glass glowing with the stars. "Tell them," he said. "The Deathworlders remember." The engines of the Terran ships ignited, filling the void with blue light. Space bent and rippled as hundreds of vessels entered formation. From the surface, the Verini watched in awe as the fleet vanished into the folds of hyperspace. Their world, once broken and forgotten, now stood as the place where humanity returned to the galaxy. Across the stars, Kale's message continued to echo. It reached mercenary outposts, hidden colonies, and derelict stations. Everywhere it played, hearts stirred and memories awoke. Old veterans whispered, "The Deathworlders are back." And somewhere, deep in the abandoned cradle of Earth, ancient systems flickered online. Rusty satellites turned their lenses toward the stars once more. A faint light pulsed in orbit, a forgotten AI awakening from centuries of sleep. "Signal received," it said in a broken Terran voice. "Welcome home." The Valkyrian emerged from slip space near the Sol system. The bridge was silent as the familiar sun filled the screen. Earth lay below, scarred but alive, oceans gleaming faintly under the golden light. Kale's voice broke the silence, soft but certain. "After all this time," Mira smiled. "We made it back, sir." Kale nodded slowly. "We never left, Commander. Not really." He turned toward the main console, opening a channel to all ships. "This is Admiral Kale Arden," he said, his voice echoing across the fleet. "To every Terran, to every forgotten child of Earth. The long night is over. Humanity has returned to the stars." The fleet responded with a single synchronized pulse of light. Their engines glowed like a sunrise breaking through endless darkness. And for the first time in centuries, the galaxy looked upon its oldest fear and oldest hope reborn. The Deathworlders had answered the call, and this time they weren't leaving.